Good day, podcast community. I'm Podcast Pete, and we got a special guest on today. You're going to want to pay close attention because what we're going to cover is a concept that's time has come, and our senior community really need to embrace this because of what you're going to hear on the podcast. I heard Susan speak at a Atlanta senior let me see. Senior Niche Network. It was great. You made a great presentation.
ASCN.
Yes, there it is. AECNN. Okay. So I wanted her to come on and share with you really what's going on in this area and what kind of questions that you can have and how you can share this podcast with people that need to know and need to be educated. So Susan, thanks for being a guest. Introduce who you are, what you do, and who you serve, and then we'll get into the podcast.
Thank you for having me.
You're
So
welcome.
my name is Susan Pryor. Our firm is focused on trying to help resolve the housing crisis that we have right now. We don't have affordable places for seniors to live. We don't have affordable places for young professionals to live either. A lot of us have bounce back kids, I call them. And just the whole overall conversation about housing, when we don't have enough places for people, our young people might work at some of the restaurants or whatever, right? Well, if the people who work at the restaurants have to commute an hour to come work at the restaurant, that makes it difficult for the restaurant to hire people. So things that we can do to add housing units into our current housing stock is really healthy for the overall economy. It's a particularly big issue for seniors. Is that good?
Oh, that's wonderful. I've got about 20 questions, so I'm going to start. So
Okay.
this morning I'm a member of the North Cobb Rotary. And so we had Ed Seltzer, who's a state representative, and he was speaking just, things that are going on. The number one question that came up was affordable housing from
Yeah.
Monique. And so he said this, and I want you to kind of like comment on it. So he talked about the construction cost now. It's about $235 a square foot. And we've come from $70 a square foot in Cobb County years ago. So we were always under a bigger city. And so now you can't, because Monique's question was, my kids want to buy a house and I can find a Cracker Barrel thing for 300,000 in a
Yeah.
crazy different area. My question, her question to him was, what can we do about it? And so I'm thinking, I got Susan on my podcast today. So whatever he says, I'm going to have some information. So he was saying about the construction cost. And I'm familiar with tiny homes, the prefab. So tell our viewers, one, how did you get into this? Because I want to know a little bit your backstory, and then we'll get into that specific answer.
Sure. I'm kind of a dork. So you wrap my dorkiness in with, I'm a real estate investor. My grandfather was a builder. I have 14 rental properties. And for the last 20 years, my business partner and I have been running a mortgage company. So I have watched for the last couple of years, it's extremely difficult to solve problems for for everybody. First time home buyer house, a craptastic house is $400,000 for just a basic starter home. And, that mortgage payment's like $3,600 in the current interest rate environment, especially if you're in town. And that's just super hard to handle. Like my niece bought a house and her mortgage payment is more expensive than every other person in the family, even though we have houses that are 50% or 100% more expensive because we got our mortgages back when mortgages were 3%. So it's a super big problem. We're not building enough. And I just got super passionate about trying to solve the problem. The other little piece is that I've spent the last couple of years focusing on reverse mortgages and serving seniors. And the more that I get involved in their challenges, the more the issue of, hey, do I take my $300,000 life savings and give it to a retirement community? Or is there another way for us to work as a family to protect that generational wealth?
Yep.
So that's
Man, I love that. So a couple questions. When it comes to the cost, because he said land, of course, has gone up, but more importantly, the construction cost has gone up so much that, when you put a home up, you have to, of course, the new construction cost versus somebody built a home is very much different. So with your concept, you're putting, is it prefab or close to prefab units in the backyards of maybe, let's say, the kids, or where they want to put, where they have the available space?
right. Well, the advantage for us is we don't have to buy the land because we're building on existing land. And then we are not building a very big space. We're using very efficient space usage. So, most of our clients are building a 2-bedroom that's about 750 square feet.
Okay.
And, but we are stick building right now. We
Okay.
are, so it's just like brand new construction. It's going to be it's a luxury apartment because the cost of building a generic home right now is not that much less than building a luxury type feel. Like granite countertops are not that much more expensive. You spent more money on the concrete to build the foundation. So it's like a new home. It's like a brand new home construction, but because I'm only building 750 square feet and I don't have to buy the land, we can do that maybe for $240,000, which is way less than if somebody tried to buy a brand new home.
Yes.
So.
Would you say, because I love it, because the Robert and Nancy had a tiny home up in Michigan. Was a professor at Michigan. So he was used to the smaller space. So he moved into this place, and then their age is getting to the point where they need more care from their kids, and their kids are downtown. So they're in and I remember we were at a social and she was checking her phone. I said, what's happening with your tiny home? And she said, I'm waiting for the zoning to be approved. And this was like, from the time I talked to them, like a year of going through all the red tape and the hoops and stuff. And they just want to be in the backyard of their kid's house so they can, be able to have the connection, but yet, like we talked before, the independence. What's the difference between what you do and a prefab tiny home that, gets dropped in a small space?
Well, the prefab world is really not quite ready yet. There's a company called Boxable that is building a super amazing product. They're basically building houses in a car factory mentality out in Arizona. They're doing a great job, but they're not licensed in Georgia yet. When they are, we will offer the product. But prefab, there's a lot of regulations around prefab and stuff. So there is this idea that you're going to buy a $9,000 thing from Amazon and put it on your lot, but that doesn't have HVAC or electrical or plumbing or foundation, or it really does. It's just wood, right? And so the world's just not quite ready for that. Now, if you didn't have anything, like and it was your goal to spend a long time to build whatever it is you want to build, then fine, go do it yourself. But that's kind of our role is to do end to end for you. So because this process is extensive, my world is zoning. I swear to you, I live in the zoning world. And so our goal is to actually get you into that tiny home in a reasonable period of time. And when I say tiny home, we call them accessory dwelling units because the zoning is getting ready for accessory dwelling units. The zoning is not really ready for a tiny home because most of the time that means that the house is on a piece of property by itself, and the zoning is not ready for that. My personal opinion is that the fact that tiny homes have become mobile is actually hurting the tiny home market because it makes everybody think it's a mobile home. Like I can build an absolutely gorgeous 750 square foot home that any of us would be comfortable living in if we can, if we get rid of all of our stuff. We can build them for seniors with with 3-foot doors and larger bathrooms and higher electrical and stuff. We can do all the accommodations for seniors and still have a very comfortable space. If they go into a retirement community, they're going to have a super teeny tiny space.
Yeah,
So
mine's
this,
750. Yeah.
yeah, this is 4 times as much space as they have in a nursing home or something. So it can be very comfortable.
Yeah, I love that. What do you like? What's the biggest challenge? I mean, I'm guessing it's education, but so let's talk zoning,
Yeah.
because we're changing the way people think. So what is your biggest challenge when you're going into an area and you're working with the government and working with city officials with zoning? What comes up constantly?
Well, we just have to, reality is there's a way to accomplish this process for everybody, no matter where you live. It's just a matter of how much flexibility the particular county or jurisdiction gives you. But the rules are bananas. Like, for example, Canton is super accessory dwelling unit friendly. They are all in on accessory dwelling units. In Canton, an investor can build an accessory dwelling unit, a primary resident can build an accessory dwelling unit. But Cherokee will not allow you to. Cherokee will allow you to build a garden house, but it won't allow you to put in the stove. So you can have a wet bar, kitchen, but you can't have a stove because they want to call it temporary housing. So if we were to do one in Cherokee, we might stub it all for the stove, put a cabinet there and leave. And if a stove showed up after that, that would be after I was gone and my certificate of occupancy was done, right? Like, it's a stupid rule. But what they're trying to do is make it more difficult for people to actually do what we're all trying to do, which is accommodate housing. Like, they're saying you can have a place for your grandma to sit for a few weeks, but you can't really house someone. So one of the biggest challenges for me is a property can say it's in Canton, but it's not actually in the city of Canton. So every single address, I have to determine which jurisdiction for zoning controls that particular address. And that is not as easy as you would think it would be. So like, for example, in Cobb County is super not happy with accessory dwelling units. But the city of Marietta proper is, if you're in the city of Marietta, you can build an accessory dwelling unit. If you're in Ackworth is super friendly too. So it's just a mess. But I have clients in Cobb. What we have to do is we have to build in Cobb, they have a rule that you can build it, but you have to have an air-conditioned breezeway. So where I put that house on the lot is different in Cobb. I have to put it closer to the primary house, can't be more than 25 feet from the primary house. And I have to have an air-conditioned breezeway. But we can still accomplish the same thing. They can have their own space. We can do landscaping and stuff to give them their own privacy. It's just that unit has to be closer to the primary home in those counties that are not accommodating. Same is true for homeowners association neighborhoods. Some homeowners associations are difficult. So if they won't work with us, they can't really argue with us on a home addition. So sometimes it just turns into a home addition, but it has all of those features that we need, which is that it's a cute, separated space. Someone has to come knock on my door or ring the doorbell to get into my world. Someone else is not cooking in my kitchen. That privacy aspect of it is really the gold. People try to make, you have a basement apartment. People want to put their seniors in the basement. Seniors don't want to be in the basement. First of all, there's stairs to the basement. But secondly, unless you have a ginormous, who wants stuff above your head, right? Like, it's just not as comfortable. And, oftentimes you don't have near the amount of light. Like, we try to make these super, super natural light. So it's a much better solution than building something in the basement. And then a lot of people have this kind of prefab idea about it. So I've had people say to me, well, my daughter keeps telling me I'm going to live in this shack in her backyard, but I don't want to live in a shack. Like, we're not building a shack, right? We, for a couple $100,000, we can build a gorgeous high-end luxury, new construction, comfortable place for mom and dad. And then that particular investment in the home is going to continue to grow over time. If
Yes.
if you search for real estate that has an accessory dwelling unit on it right now, you can't find it. Like you can't, there's nothing to
Yeah.
buy. So when you have that, at this point, the best thing people can do is buy and then build something. But when you go to sell that, it's going to be good. It's going to be good for your housing prices. And then if mom and dad move out, you can always rent it, or you can move your bounce back kids in it, or you can move my bounce back kids in. I'm happy to share my bounce back kids if you have
I
places.
think sometimes we all would like to do that because we don't mind when they bounce back, but we want to have the space because they're now older. They have they're set in their ways, and it's not like when they were 10 years old. Yeah.
No,
What do you,
I don't want them. I don't want them in my kitchen. I don't want them cooking in my kitchen at 10 o'clock at night. And I want their people to go in and out another door, not my door. So you can tell I have a bounce back child that I love, but I would love for him to have a little. This is my joke. My joke is I'll build one of these in your yard and send my kid over, and then I'll build one in my yard and your kid can come over, and we'll all be happier.
yeah.
So
Yes. I love it from the investor's eyes because when my daughter sent me the unit, it was $800 a month. And I'm thinking, a small dwelling in the backyard generating that kind of revenue. I mean, you take that over, that's 9,600 a year for a small dwelling. I don't know what the square footage, but it was 1 bedroom, 1 bath. And
right.
it was kind of cute. It had its own access, but I'm thinking like, that's almost like, the Airbnb concept is you've got this facility that there's need for it. Then let's just make it a revenue generator. Like you said, if the mother-in-law moves out or something, you can still rent it out because I know in Kennesaw, it's just, it's growing
Right.
like crazy. So they either got to put up a 10-story apartment or a 5-story apartment with another 350 units in it. And then, or you can utilize the existing space that won't put as much pressure on the roads because infrastructure is so important in a growing city. Do you attend a lot of zoning meetings? Is that?
I don't yet. There is a ton. I'm sorry, I didn't mean to cut you. There's a big movement across the country to try to deal with zoning on these issues. California actually has a rule that no county and no homeowners association can tell you can't do it. Is where California's gone at this point.
Really?
Yeah. So that's it's a whole other thing to build in California, but so there's a lot of movement to try to make these and if, for example, it's happening like 3 years ago, you couldn't have built an ADU anywhere. Now you can build one in Gwinnett. You can build one in a city of Atlanta is super aggressive. I'm actually buying a house next week that we are going to build an ADU in the backyard and rent the primary home and the accessory dwelling unit. And the city of Atlanta is the only place in Metro Atlanta right now where you can do that as an investor. But they're gorgeous. And there's this whole little area down there where, some other investors and I are building these units and city of Atlanta is happy. The other thing you got to think about is that one of the reasons you worry about adding additional units without the right zoning is because of the school systems. But the people that live in tiny homes are seniors and young people.
Yes.
They're generally not people with children, certainly not school-age children. So there's a little bit of like traffic maybe, but especially with our seniors, they're not on the roads very much. Certainly in the traffic pattern. So, but we have an issue of being near each other. It's about connection.
Yes.
And, I have 3 85-year-olds in my life, and I'm blessed that they can afford to have fancy 55 and older homes that aren't too far from me. But, how many times a week would it be so nice if I could just go, you get the printer's not printing, or my phone doesn't do what it used to do, or I can't get my whatever on TV, right? Just the little things. Or can I borrow or could you come put this pick up this thing off the shelf for me or whatever, right? Like little things that I would love to do, but even as close as I am and as good a situation as I am, it's a 45-minute round trip to go help them with something small. If I could just go in the backyard and do it. And we get involved in all kinds of interesting things as it relates to that. Right. So I have a client whose father is a veteran, and he lives 5 hours from here in a not a VA facility, but in a nursing homes facility. Well, that company has taken over all of his money. So all of his VA pension and his Social Security gets paid directly to that home. And she's super worried. The daughter is super worried about his care. There's all kinds of things available for veterans. We can bring him here. We can use some VA special grants to help afford the project. And for a very small, so let's just take that for example. For her, she builds a 500 square foot house. Say that costs $150,000. So she gets an equity line of credit on her primary house minus some grant money. So she's got about $100,000 she's borrowing. Well, that payment's about $800 a month, right? Because if you think about it, if you get an equity line to build one of these, you don't have to deal with taxes and insurance because you're already paying that on the primary house. So it's even a monthly payment. It's an affordable move. And that's what most people pay with them. Most of us have a ton of home equity. And so most people, if they're not sitting on a bunch of cash, they'll just get an equity line of credit. And then mom's Social Security usually is way enough to cover the monthly payment on the equity line of credit.
Yeah, I live in a place that it's 4 floors, it's 55 and older, but I heard average age is 80. People move and they don't want to move, but they move here to be near kids. And you said grandkids and kids, you said connection. And I love that word because we have to be connected to our family in some form or fashion. And what Ed said in his talk was, what we're looking to solve is the single mom that's in a cul-de-sac that is working in an area and they're spending, and he went through a couple other scenarios in that kids are going to 2 different schools, there's commutes, and she's working for an hour and 15 minutes away because affordable, she had to, because she couldn't live near where she worked. And I think we're looking at a situation where traffic is an issue and how easy it can be to walk out the back door and be with your mom and dad and check in on them, or even when they over here, we babysit a lot, that.
Right, exactly. Yeah. Like if your babysitter was in the backyard, like that's,
solved, and you still do your stuff. You just walk over, check on them, depending on the age, but you're not getting in the car and commuting 45 minutes, an hour. And you know what I love about your concept is I didn't realize when you move in, there's about 175 potential people in this building. Well, when you put that many people together in a building, it didn't get any different. The clicks and all the things. It's like you're 25 again, but you're not. And so it becomes like, I want to say Peyton Place, but it becomes, there's a lot of drama. And so but with family, your family, there's not as much, but when you take a person who's never been in this situation, you put them with 175 other people and they got to learn their names. They got to develop new friendships. It's overwhelming. It's just overwhelming for a senior to be thrown in an environment that they're not comfortable with. So I love the idea, if that's the only option, do it. But sometimes what you're saying is you put that unit right in the backyard and you just solve about 10 different problems. What would you say? Like, how do you see yourself? Like I love what you said at the beginning, solving problems. So it's all about how big the problem you want to solve. So with you, when you wake up in the morning, what's that big problem that you just like drives you?
Well, I just get excited when I can help people come up with solutions and realize how amazing these solutions can be for their overall health and well-being. You were talking about babysitting, even just not being able to babysit and not having to drive home at night from babysitting. Like I remember my parents taking care of my kids, and they just didn't want to drive at night after a certain period of time. Just you're right, it's 10 problems you solve. By when I grew up, my grandparents could live in the neighborhood next door. They were 10 minutes away. My aunt lived 4 minutes away. I had a car accident once. 7 people were there before the police, right? So we don't have that anymore because the house next door is $800,000. And so this is really, to me, it's a way to help families stay together. I personally don't feel like seniors do as well in senior communities because
I totally agree.
Inevitably, when you move into a senior community, you are the healthiest person there because you just got there, right? And I mean, in nursing care, and so if there's a way to be near your young people, I just think, I think that's what was intended, was that we would all be around each other. Now, I think I mentioned in my talk, sometimes we want to kill each other, which is why I really like the fact that having your own space, your own front door, there is your own kitchen. There's something very freeing about having your own kitchen space. If you don't want to talk to anybody, you don't have to talk to anybody for 24 hours, right? It's different if you have your own house in the house, but you have to go cook in somebody else's kitchen or whatever. If you have to argue about who's doing the dishes, those things are tough. So I just like to be part of solutions. I mean, it's not fast. It's a lot. I think I feel overwhelmed periodically, but I'm a process girl. I came out of the mortgage business. We were all about process. We might close 40 clients in 1 month. So I was all about, there's these 85 things that have to happen and they have to happen urgently. So I'm just trying to take that urgency to the process of building. And I'm making everybody a little crazy with that, but I think that's good. Because you're dealing with design and architecture and surveys and permitting and zoning and insurance and all the things. And I just am somebody who's always managed process. So I think I bring to it something a little bit different. I'm going on, but the other piece of it is that builders don't really like that front piece of it. Builders don't really like the survey and inspection and all that stuff. They just want you to bring them permitted plans and say, build this property. And so that's a lot of why these projects will get lost. That's why your friend took a year, right? There wasn't someone driving it from the beginning. The builders are like, once you get it all figured out.
Yes. Yep.
So I bring that structure to it. And so far that's been super helpful for both the builders love it. And then the clients get that, professional handholding that is my deal.
Yeah. You mentioned reverse mortgages early on. My mother-in-law is 90 and she still lives in her house and she has a reverse mortgage. And I now have been about almost 2 years in this facility. And I see both sides of that with what you say, like we don't always thrive at a certain age in a environment like that. I think the longer we can stay at home and accommodate our mom and dad, the better. When you replace and have to put them, and it's like you don't have any other choices, it's a difficult thing. We wanted name tags here, and I'd ask people, and they go, "Yeah, it's a good idea," and they never did it. But we started doing it, and it was like more and more people, because if they ask you your name and you don't remember it, you're not going to keep asking them. But there were all the residents wear big name tags where people can read them, and they feel more connected because people. You're not always asking somebody their name, and you feel self-conscious. But I just am amazed at the dynamics of of a lot of people in one place. And I think for my mother-in-law, she's doing fine at 90. And so she's in her home, she likes it, and they reversed the mortgage. So they were able to finance it. So I love that concept. I had never really knew too much about it till it was close to home. And then I said, you know what? You're right about some senior places. They want all your money.
Yeah.
Like before you check in, they want everything. Well, what if you don't live more than a year or two? They still keep all your money. And
Right.
so that
It's,
part is
yeah.
so jacked up. I can't,
Yeah.
and then this is more, I see it in Virginia. I don't see it as much down here, or at least I haven't heard of it, but I'm in the senior, I have senior people, vendors and different on the senior living podcast. So I
Yeah.
hear a lot, but is that reverse mortgages? Are they, are they dictated by state on how those things can roll out?
No, it's actually a federal program. So it's
Okay.
actually managed by the Federal Housing FHA.
Okay.
It's an FHA loan, so it's managed
Okay.
at a national level. The rules are. It got a bad rap when it was originally put into place. There were some significant unintended consequences. It got super regulated in 2016, and now it's much harder to screw it up. It's like, for example, if you do a reverse mortgage, the client has to go to counseling, a phone counseling class before they can do anything. And as a lender, that makes me much more comfortable that we all understand everything,
Sure.
because it's done with a third party and they don't know me. So yeah, it's what I think is good is that this is the beginning, Pete, of conversations about how do we solve people's problems with creativity. Like sometimes
Yes.
I have one senior that wants to build a house for him to live in, and then he's going to move his family into the primary house because he just doesn't need that much space. And he can do something amazing for his family for a relatively small amount of money and move into.
Mhm.
Sometimes people move into the tiny home on their property and then rent the primary home out. And that's a way to have income, and it's a way to have people around. So
Yeah.
there's all kinds of options. Construction costs are an issue because that hits us too, but at least we don't have to buy the land, and at least you already pay the taxes and insurance, so you eliminate that cost from the process.
Yeah, that's a significant one. Why don't you? I want to be respectful of your time, so tell our viewers how can they get a hold of you. And I left a zero. I noticed. Okay, I'll do that while
Oh,
you're saying.
and I checked it for you. Yes. So
Yeah,
my
well,
phone number is 770-331-6952. Or you can check out some of our plans. We have 7 plans on the website at
okay.
Curated ADU Homes.com. We can do anything custom. We do home additions too, but it's nice if you can start with one of the plans. It helps you mentally kind of go, okay, I want to do this, but I want a bigger window, or I want a French doors, or it gives you a place to start. So, well, I sure appreciate you.
Yeah. Before I let you go, what would be the one thing you would want our viewers to take home from our time on the podcast?
I think the biggest thing is that we are pouring generational wealth into retirement communities. And if that's the best thing for you, great. But if you would like to find a way for your family to protect that wealth, mom and dad spent their whole lives to accumulate $300,000. If there's a different way to make sure that that money gets handed down instead of poured into a retirement community, it's worth thinking about.
Yes. That I love that. That's a challenging thought. And I think that our viewers, I want to encourage our viewers, share this with people that need to know their options. It's all about education. And so if you know people that are heading down a path and they think that the retirement community is the only way to go, look at different options, look at different things that are out there and explore all your options. So please share this with people you may know. So, Susan, I want to thank you for being a guest on our podcast. We appreciate you being with us and educating our community on the options for our seniors.
Great. Thank you, Pete. I appreciate your time.
You're welcome.